month after month after the month, the voters, I mean, you could choose top 10 science fiction games or just normal topics, but we keep digging deeper into Jen's and my psyche. Last month we had the top 10 games we were saddest to see go, and now we're doing this one, the top 10 games we disagree on the most. I don't know, maybe the voters just like making me have to work hard, because for a list like this, I don't have any of these games, so I have to keep putting virtual phantom boards on the screen or boxes, which is a real pain in the butt. I'd much rather just be able to talk about a game we have that I love, that I can show you the box, but right. Okay, so how do I do this list? Well, basically, if you go to gone.rahdo.com, there's right there, you can find a list of around 460 games that we have had our hot little hands on over the years, but then we've ultimately gotten rid of, that we have sent on. And so I took that list of 460 or so games and looked for the ones where really we got rid of the game, or I sold the game or traded it away or gave it away because either Jen or I didn't like it, in spite of the fact that the other one of us did like it, and in some cases absolutely loved and adored it. Because here's the thing, we got so many games on this wall that both of us love, it just makes no sense to keep games around that is really only good for one of us. I mean, why bother? So I think I found around 30 or so of these games where, okay, it just didn't make sense because either I or Jen didn't care for it. And then I had to break it down to 10, because that's the nature of this list. And what I started to notice was there were certain patterns that emerged. So ultimately, what I'm going to be talking about is 10 games that represent the 10 most common reasons that Jen and I might not agree. And so basically, I got these 10 reasons, and each one has a representative game. And we're going to start with the ones where there were very few instances of this disagreement, and then at the bottom of the list, the number one will be the most common bone of contention between me and Jen in terms of whether or not we're going to keep a game. So that's the deal, folks. Hopefully you find this interesting. Let's get going with number 10, Steam Park. And now, this game is a stand-in for a few games, and I have to admit, this is at the top of the list because there are very few of these that we've gotten rid of. This is a game that we got rid of mostly because of me. I did not like the fact that Steam Park's overall gameplay balance was a bit wonky. I'm a former game designer, professional game designer, and I think I care a lot more about the sanctity of game balance than Jen does. Jen's more along the lines of, you know what? If I'm having a good time, who cares if the game is balanced or if there's some kind of Monty Hall problem or, there's some radical, thing. Who cares? We're just here to have fun. Whereas me, it kind of gets under my skin. And I talked about this in Steam Park. There were just a few key things in the design of the original game. And I guess expansions have come out since. Maybe these have been resolved. But there were some issues with the overall game balance of the original game that made me decide, you know what, let's let it go. Because we got plenty of games that I'm pretty confident are very nicely balanced. Jen loved this game, though. I mean, which was so it was kind of heartbreaking to see go. We talked about it and said, "Honey, look, this is clearly borderline broken." And she said, "Yeah, doesn't change it. Doesn't mean it's not fun. It's still a fun game. Wee." And but that's why Steam Park ultimately went because of game balance issues, which again is not something that comes up very often because I try really hard to avoid running into that problem in the first place. I generally vet games before we get them, and Steam Park was one that just kind of squeezed through. Don't get me wrong, I'm not disagreeing. It's not a fun game. But like I said, it's just there were certain things about it that, and which like I said, I would not be surprised at all if since then they have been fixed and addressed in expansion. I believe another expansion is coming out for Steam Park, or maybe even two are coming out just next week at SNSPL 2016. Anyway, though, so that was first reason, game balance issues represented by Steam Park. Now let's move on to reason number 9, and this is an odd one. Sometimes I get rid of games because they make me feel stupid. And there's no better example of that than Battle Line. Oh my gosh. Jen loves Battle Line. She absolutely adores it. And there's other games that this has come up with as well in the past. Steamworks comes to mind. But Battleline, it's just, we sit down at the table and she just utterly destroys me, and I just feel like a very stupid person flailing around with a blindfold on, stumbling into walls, and it just doesn't make me feel good about myself. Now, again, this is the higher end of the list, so this isn't something that comes up very often. Because, I don't know, I think I'm a fairly smart guy. I think I'm a fairly good game player, but occasionally there are games that just don't click with me. And now, to be fair, this sometimes happens with Jen as well, and we will get rid of a game that I think it purrs, but it's just something about her brain chemistry. But I find it's more often the case that it's me. We'll get rid of these ones where it's like, okay, I'm just not having fun because I'm just feeling way too stupid. Yes, and I know if I, devoted myself to play this game another 10 times, I would eventually start to play it at the same level as you and all that, but why? When we've got so many other games that I feel good about playing. So, number 9, Battleline said bye-bye, not too recently. Although, another interesting one, this is a game that's getting a reprint this year at SNSPL 2016, being republished as Schottentotten. And I can't let Jen know that because she'll want me to go pick it up again. Anyway, that was number 9, Battleline. Then, on to number 8. And now this is a broad topic of games that, these first two we're getting rid of for reasons of mine. Jen wanted to keep them. I was happy to see them go. Now we're flipping the script. These are games that I like that Jen has a problem with. Number 8, semi-cooperative games, I think are really, really cool. Jen doesn't like them, and the best example I could think of that was Lord of the Rings, the dice building game, which is a really neat. Now, this was a game that was marred with certain problems when it launched, and it had a rule book that was less than ideal and just some weird production issues. But once you got past them, the core game I thought was really brilliant in the way that it captured the fundamental theme of corruption of Lord of the Rings through semi-cooperative natures. It's a cooperative game. Everybody really, for the most part, has to work together. We're all members of the Fellowship. We're all trying to make sure Sauron is defeated. But every once in a while, you get the opportunity to make selfish decisions that put you ahead of your opponents, because in the end there can be only one winner because we're keeping score. I think that's great. I love that idea. Jen doesn't. And so, as much, and she loves Lord of the Rings, but we ultimately got rid of Lord of the Rings Dice Builder game because she didn't want to semi-co-op. She wanted to co-op, either co-op or competitive. And now, I think Jen is very much simpatico with the feeling of a lot of folks out there. It seems like semi-cooperative games are kind of a lightning rod. You love them or you hate them. And I guess, Jen and I, we're right there on that battle line, me loving them, her hating them. To be fair, there is one semi-cooperative game that I can think of that it turns out we both love, the wonderful, wonderful CO2. And that's because it breaks the paradigm of most semi-cooperative games are basically a cooperative experience where every once in a while you get a little bit selfish and introduce a semi. CO2 is a game that does the other. It's predominantly a competitive game where every once in a while you have to cooperate. That, I think, is a formula that's going to work for more people. It works for both Jen and it works for me, and I think overall it's better. But for the semi-cooperatives that are predominantly cooperative, every once in a while you have to compete. Like Archipelago is another one like that, that Jen had a bigger problem with the negotiation in it than I did. Outcast Heroes is another one. But yeah, semi-co-op, typified by Lord of the Rings, the dice building game, which was a neat game. I liked it quite a bit, but ultimately it went because Jen didn't. So now let's move on to number 7, topic-wise, is the notion of heavy themes, heart-wrenching themes, emotional themes. And the example I'm going to use for this, there are a few different ones I could have brought up. I'm going to talk about Village. Well, I could also talk about My Village, and I could talk about Freedom, the Underground Railroad. I could talk about a bunch of games. This is a subject matter that is a problem for Jen. Me, I love it. I love it when a modern designer board game decides to tackle head-on meaty, heavy, weighty, emotion-laden topics, and it doesn't turn a flinching eye. I think it's phenomenal. But Jen has a bit of an issue with that because she just wants to sit down at the table and have a good time. And she doesn't want to be challenged. I mean, don't get me wrong. I mean, Jen likes to be challenged. I mean, she'll watch movies, she'll read books, but she doesn't want that from games. She wants games to be light, fun, positive affairs. She doesn't want to have to look at the dark, seedy underbelly of humanity, nor, as a general rule, although there are exceptions to that, nor does she want to have to deal with heartbreak. And that's why I'm talking about Village, because Village is an interesting game. It's a pretty straightforward, by the numbers almost, dry Euro. But one of the core conceits of it is that this is a game where these villagers that we look after, the game lasts for multiple generations of the evolution of this village. And you are controlling a given family that's associated with this village. And over the course of the game, your family members will grow old and die. It's a core portion of the game that you have to strategically time when you're going to let the person who you installed as the mayor of the town, eventually, they're going to have to die. And the thing is, if you do it well, if you time it right, you can score a lot of points off of that because they will have a lasting legacy, and that's the points in this game, or kind of, that's what victory points represent, how much of an impact they have on future generations. I thought that was brilliant. I think Village is a phenomenal design, absolutely wonderful, but Jen hated having to think strategically about the death of her characters who she would get emotionally attached to. It just really got under her skin. And so we got rid of the game. And like I said, there's other games where it just makes her uncomfortable. It makes her unhappy to have to face these kinds of heavy, weighty moments. And so that's why Village is gone. Anyway, so that was 10, 9, 8, 7, that is heavy themes, which is something that Jen doesn't care for. Now let's move on to number 6. This is another one that Jen doesn't care for. And by the way, when push comes to shove and all said and done, 7 of these 10 topics are reasons that we got rid of the game because Jen didn't like it. Only 3 of them are because of me. And I think that just reflects, I guess, Jen's a bit pickier than me about what she wants in her gaming experience. Me, I'm a bit more laissez-faire. I'm kind of all over the place. I tend to enjoy a wider range of things. And I don't know what that reflects about her taste versus mine. But, and I should also add, I'm just jumping in the middle here, for every one of these topics, almost without exception, there are examples where I have a similar problem with the game. But these are still things that tend to break down either something Jen doesn't like, but I'm cool with, or vice versa. So anyway, we're now going to go through a bunch of things that Jen doesn't like. We had heavy themes she doesn't particularly care for. Another thing she doesn't care for is a game that is too crunchy, like, say, Core Worlds. And there's a few other games that have come up like this over the years, but Core Worlds was a very strong example of this. And this is interesting. Jen is a smart cookie. She really knows her stuff. And the reality is she wins. In all the competitive games we play, she wins. I mean, I used to actually keep track of wins, our win and loss ratio. And over the space of 2 years, Jen had about a 65% win rate against me, which I'll be honest is a little demoralizing for me, but I just kind of try and suck it up and do the best I can. Jen wins, and because she is a deeper, more thoughtful player than me. I tend to go by the seat of my pants, go with the first or second thing that looks good and just see how the chips fall. Jen is not. She is an incredibly methodical player, and she wants to figure out all the permutations of every impact of every choice that sits in front of her. And that's what she loves. She loves doing that. She loves taking control of some big simulation and grinding it through her brain and coming out with the perfect solution for optimum efficiency. She loves that. That's a good grind that she likes. But sometimes we will come across a game that pushes her past her breaking point, that has too many variables, too many things to track. And Core Worlds was one of those. I really didn't have that much of a problem playing the game. For me, I mean, this is an interesting deck builder about galactic conquest and all that. And by the way, there's another problem with Core Worlds, which we'll come to later. I might revisit that one. But I could just, okay, well, man, I've got a lot of options here because this is a game that gives you a ton of flexibility, a ton of options you can pursue, and each one of those options has huge ramifications that will play out over multiple turns. And me, I could say, well, okay, I could do that. I'll go with that. Almost on instinct. But Jen can't do that. She's like, okay, well, now I have to figure out this. I have to figure out all the permutations, this, that, and the other. And so this was a game, and there have been others in the past, where it was just too much, and the grind would literally grind her down, and she would stop having fun. So this is something that comes up, and we're getting more into the, there have been a few games like this over the years. So being too crunchy like Core Roads is a problem that Jen occasionally has. Now, moving on to my number 5, we have almost the exact opposite. What I call baby step games, like, say, discoveries. Actually, we just played another one recently. Expo 1906 had this same issue. And there's been a few others over the years, too. These are games that are deep and interesting economic Euro-style simulations, or adventure, or whatever they might be. But they are interesting games where, on a given turn, you're not going to get much done. You're only going to take baby steps. And really, it won't be until you have done several turns back to back over the course of, heck, maybe half of a game before you'll really see payoff for what you've been doing. And so when it comes around to your turn, you're like, okay, I'll do this. It doesn't really give me much feedback, much sense of satisfaction, much, it doesn't necessarily feel like, wow, I accomplished a lot. You didn't accomplish a lot. It takes you several rounds before you accomplish anything, and that's certainly true for discoveries. And Jen, man, she does not like that at all. And it really kind of ties back into the previous one, because she loves sitting down saying, wow, here's all the things I've got to play with, and I could do this, I could do this, this has knock-on effects with this and that and the other thing. And she loves going through all that so that, amongst all the chaos of all her choices, she can focus like a laser, find the perfect thing, and then move forward. And more often than not, beat me as a result of that. But when it's a game like this where, well, you know what? I mean, there are long-term impacts for your choices, but you're really not getting that much done turn to turn. They just really kind of don't sit well with her. So these baby step games are just a turn-off. So games like Discoveries, which was a beautiful, lovely game, kind of almost a gateway-ish style Lewis and Clark adventure, discovering the new lands of the American continent. I thought it was really cool. I thought it was gorgeous. I thought it was clever. It was fast playing. Don't get me wrong, there were other issues with this game. Most notably is that it really wants more than 2 to be at its best. It was only 2. The worker reuse structure was kind of, so we got rid of the game for other reasons. That's often true with these as well. I mean, not always. Sometimes the only reason we got rid of Village was, previously was because of Jen's aversion to the heavy, weighty emotional consequences of her actions. But a lot of times there's more than one reason. But anyway, Discoveries, main reason we got rid of it, Jen does not like the baby steps you take in that game. So let's move on to another one. This is another thing that Jen does not like. And again, it's kind of a continuation of of the theme of baby steps. This is just often, and this is becoming more and more the norm. This is happening to us a lot more recently. Games that are just too light. Like, say, New York 1901, which is a lovely game. It's a beautiful presentation. It's a clever, fast-playing, fun game. Make no mistake, it's a light game. It's basically a gateway game. This is a perfect game to bring new people in because it doesn't challenge you too much, but it does give you enough to think about. But the more games we play, the more often Jen says, yeah, that was nice, but I don't need to play it again. It's too light. And we got a bunch of, heck, I recently got rid of all our Ticket to Rides because Jen's like, I don't think I ever want to play Ticket to Ride again. It's just too light. And that's not to say there aren't interesting decisions. Fans of these games, of course they are. But Jen would rather, again, these last 3 things kind of give a really good insight into where Jen is. That she's looking to kind of laser focus on not too crunchy, not too light, not too baby steppish, just right. This kind of medium weight to slightly heavier than medium weight Euro. That's what she loves. And so more and more I find we are getting rid of some of our old gateways. Gateways that I'm happy to keep, but she's not going to want to play them, so let's get rid of them. Let's keep the ones that we both want to play. So that's why I mentioned, in fact, New York 1901. I recently got rid of it, even though it's lovely, because Jen found it to be a little bit too light. Now let's move on to the number 3 topic. It's back to me. Finally, back to a topic that we're getting rid of games because of my personal peccadillos, my hang-ups. And this one, I think, if you're a longtime fan of Run, so you've been waiting, hey, when is this going to come? Here we go, folks. Conflict-heavy games. Like, say, and there are so many examples of this, but the best one I could think of, or the one that's most germane to this point, would be Cthulhu Realms, which is an interesting one. This whole topic is very interesting. And this is, I think, there are so many misconceptions about the notion of conflict-heavy games and their Rahdo runs-through view on them. Because a lot of times when I say, yeah, this game, it just has too much conflict for me and Jen, we ultimately got rid of it. A lot of people just, there's this kind of this gut assumption that, oh, he must have gotten rid of that because his wife doesn't like fighting in games, or doesn't like getting beaten up in games, and so they got rid of it. I gotta get new batteries for this camera, folks. I mean, I just looked. It said the battery was half full, and then it just went dead. No warning, no nothing. Sorry. Where was I? Oh, conflict-heavy games. Right. Sorry if I'm going to repeat myself. I don't know where I got cut off there, but basically, I'm the Care Bear. Jen's the shark. Now, don't get me wrong. It's not like Jen wants to go out of her way to get games with a lot of take that. She has no particular desire to kick down my sandcastle. She has no desire to mess up my perfectly tended garden. But she's a little bit more accepting of it than I am. Most of the games that feature a lot of heavy conflict that we do tend to keep are ones where she has no problem with it at all, like Cthulhu Realms. And I'm like, well, okay, I guess I can go with it. But, the more we played Cthulhu Realms, which still, at the end of the day, does have a lot of, oh, you built that nice thing. Hey, look, I can tear this down now. And, it just becomes this cyclic destruction rebuild cycle. And it's like, why would I play ultimately, as cool as it is, and we thought it was a very clever game. We both liked it. We both loved the art. We both loved the presentation. But ultimately, I got rid of it because, okay, I've got so many deck builders that don't require me to tear your stuff down. And so we got rid of it because of me. Jen would have happily kept it, and she would have happily played that over several other games. And again, I got to repeat this. Jen does not like destroying stuff. And there are many, many games. The majority of conflict-heavy games, we both agree that it's too much for both of us. But occasionally, there are games where, no, Jen's perfectly fine with the level of conflict and destruction in this game, and we only got rid of it because of me. So that, anyway, sorry for the power outage interruption, folks. That was the number 3 conflict-heavy games typified by Cthulhu Realms. Now, moving on to number 2. Okay, and we're back to problems with Jen. Actually, the number 2 and the number 1 are both Jen issues, not my issues. Number 2, and they are both, by the way, represented by the same game. Number 2 on the list is relentless co-ops. And there are so many examples of this, Ghost Stories and Robinson Crusoe and a bunch, but I'm not going to actually put another graphic on the screen. I'm going to talk about one I kept anyway. Space Hulk, Death Angel. The talk about a relentless, in-your-face, never gives up, constantly beats you down, you barely crawl across the finish line kind of co-op. That's what this is, and I love it. I love these high-pressure, high-tension, just terrifying cooperative games that just never give you a moment's notice, a moment's solace. Jen can't stand that. It's just an instant turn-off for her. And so, we've gotten rid of so many wonderful cooperative games because of that, and it's kind of heartbreaking for me. Because considering the fact that I lose more often than her, I kind of like playing co-op, so I don't have to feel quite so bad about myself. But anyway, this one I kept anyway because as it happens, it's a phenomenal solo game. I hold out hope someday that maybe Jen will change and she will become more accepting of, and I've seen some glimpses of this. Mechs vs. Minions was a recent example. That's a pretty relentless game as well, but she was more accepting of it. So maybe someday, she'll kind of come around to my way of thinking and she'll be more ready to face the endless onslaught hordes of something like, say, Space Hulk, Death Angel, a relentless cooperative game. But for now, more often than not, we end up getting rid of those games no matter how much I love them. So that was the number 2 topic. And then the last topic, the number 1 topic, which as a poster child, I'm going to bring this right back up, themes. There are several themes in gaming that Jen just cannot stand. Me, I'm much more accepting of themes. There are a few I don't like. Actually, I recently discovered I don't like beer brewing games. They're just such a turnoff for me. I don't matter how good the design and the mechanisms are. I'm just like, I just can't pull myself into this world. But Jen, there are a lot of things she doesn't like. And Space Hulk Death Angel features probably her biggest thing on her hit list. Games that put a real-world gun in your hand, or in this case, a near future. But you're running around with flamethrowers and assault rifles and stuff like that. Jen hates that. There are so many wonderful games out there. Uncharted was a really good little game. We just. Jen just won't give them the time of day. Occasionally she will. Occasionally there are games where she will kind of turn up her nose and say, okay, I'm just going to pretend that's a ray gun in my hand instead of an assault rifle. But more often than not, she just won't give it the time of day. And it's not just, murder simulators that, games with a high quotient of violence. That, again, specifically, violence that comes from real-world guns. Violence that comes from fireball spells or crossbows or ray guns, she's fine with that. But it's just the real world, that tangible aspect. She doesn't want to hold a gun in her hand. So, but there are other ones too. Like a really good example was Testament of Duke Decreci. She really hated that theme as well because she didn't like being put in a situation where every round she's trying to have lots of kids. Because that's a theme that really turned her off, just totally as an aside. So occasionally there are themes that pop up. There's like, Jen's like, just no thanks, no thanks. And this kind of dovetails back into an earlier thing. Heavy themes like Freedom of the Underground Railroad or This War of Mine was another example where, okay, I get it. I totally understand. This is a admirable thing this game is doing. I appreciate that it has a message that it's trying to educate and illuminate, but I just don't want to experience it. It's a theme I don't care for. So I talked about this a bit earlier with like heavy themes, but now we're just talking about themes in general that she finds distasteful because of her own peccadillos, and Space Hulk Death Angel running around spending the whole game shooting off machine guns. I just don't know. I love this game so much, but she will never play it with me. And that's it, folks. There are the top 10 game/reasons that Jen and I don't see eye to eye on games. And actually, before I close, I just do want to reiterate. I think I mentioned this up front, but now I'm really not quite sure, so I just figured I'd get back on the camera. In spite of how this list might sound, Jen and I agree 99 times out of 100. It's like one of the biggest strengths, the cornerstone pillars of our marriage is that we are so simpatico, that we do have fully compatible outlooks on life and politics and game design and things that we find entertaining. Sure, there's lots of stuff. Jen likes TV shows I don't like. I like TV shows she doesn't like. But there are so many things that we can find that we can both share and enjoy together. And that's one of the reasons we love board games so much. Because, like I said, I went through a list of 460-some games that we had gotten rid of. The overwhelming majority of those games, when we got rid of them, we both were in lockstep. We agreed really, really closely. But like I said, there were around 30 or so who were like, no, we didn't agree on those. But we got rid of them anyway. Still, what is that? 30 out of 460. I think for the most part, that points to that more often than not, Jen and I are, we're a good team. And that, I think, is a nice positive note to end on. After talking forever long, I just talked about the fundamental schisms between me and Jen. I just didn't want to make clear there aren't any. Jen and I, we love each other very much, and we are incredibly happy having been married for 25 years now. And sorry, I've gone off the deep end, but I guess that's what happens when the voters choose such an oddball topic. Maybe next time we'll get back to normal stuff like top 10 deck builders. Who knows? But anyway, folks, that's it. Thanks for watching. Now, if you have any questions, comments, concerns, as always, please let me know. Otherwise, I hope you have a very, very nice day, and I hope you find a lot of games that you love playing with the loved ones in your life, like me and Jen. So, talk to you later. So long. Bye-bye.